All Dr. Franklin said was, I'd like to arrange for a test on this. His voice was dry and thoughtful, but panic curled through Poppy. Anyway, she couldn't explain what was happening inside her. Some sort of dreadful premonition, like a black pit opening in the ground in front of her. Why? Her mother was asking the doctor. Well, Dr. Franklin smiled and pushed his glasses up. He tapped 2 fingers on the examining table. Just as a part of a process of elimination, really. Poppy says she's been having pain in the upper abdomen, pain that radiates to her back, pain that's worse at night. She's lost her appetite recently, and she's lost weight, and her gallbladder is palpable. That means I can feel it is enlarged. Now, those are symptoms of a lot of things, and the sonogram will rule out some of them. Poppy calmed down. She couldn't remember what a gallbladder did, but she was pretty sure she didn't need it. Anything involving an organ with such a silly name couldn't be serious. Dr. Franklin was going on, talking about the pancreas and pancreatitis and palpable livers, and Poppy's mother was nodding as if she understood. Poppy didn't understand, but the panic was gone. It was as if a cover had been whisked neatly over the black hole. Pit, leaving no sign that it had ever been there. You can get the sonogram done at the children's hospital across the street, Dr. Franklin was saying. Come back here after it's finished. Poppy's mother was nodding, calm, serious and efficient, like Phil or Cliff. Okay, we'll get this taken care of. Poppy felt just slightly important. Nobody she knew had been to the hospital for tests. Her mother ruffled her hair as they walked out of Dr. Franklin's office. Well, Poppet, what have you done to yourself now? Poppy smiled impishly. She was fully recovered from her earlier worry. Maybe I'll have an operation and I'll have an interesting scar, she said to amuse her mother. Let's hope not, her mother said, unamused. The Suzanne G. Monteforte Children's Hospital was a handsome grey building with sinuous curves and giant picture windows. Poppy looked thoughtfully into the gift shop as they passed. It was clearly a kid's gift shop, full of rainbow slinkies and stuffed animals that a visiting adult could buy as a last-minute present. A girl came out of the shop. She was a little older than Poppy, maybe 17 or 18. She was pretty, with an expertly made-up face and a cute bandana, which didn't quite conceal the fact that she had no hair. She looked happy, round-cheeked, and with earrings dangling jauntily beneath the bandana. But Poppy felt a stab of sympathy and fear. That girl was really sick, which was what hospitals were for, of course. For really sick people. Suddenly Poppy wanted to get her own tests over with and get out of here. The sonogram wasn't painful, but it was vaguely disturbing. The technician smeared some kind of jelly over Poppy's middle, then ran a cold scanner over it, shooting sound waves into her, taking pictures of her insides. Poppy found her mind returning to the pretty girl with no hair. To distract herself, she thought about James, and for some reason what came to mind was the first time she'd seen James, the day he came to kindergarten. He'd been a pale, slight boy with big grey eyes, and something subtly weird about him that made the bigger boys start picking on him immediately. On the playground they ganged up on him like hounds around a fox, until Poppy saw what was happening. Even at 5 she'd had a great right hook. She burst into the group, slapping faces and kicking shins until the big boys went running. Then she turned to James. "Want to be friends?" After a brief hesitation he nodded shyly. There had been something oddly sweet in his smile. But Poppy had soon found that her new friend was strange in small ways. When the classes had died, he picked up the course without revulsion and asked Poppy if she wanted to hold it. The teacher had been horrified. He knew where to find dead animals, too. He'd shown her a vacant lot where several dead rabbit carcasses lay in the tall brown grass. He was matter-of-fact about it. When he got older, the big kids stopped picking on him. He grew up to be as tall as any of them, and surprisingly strong and quick, and he developed a reputation for being tough and dangerous. When he got angry, something almost frightening shone in his grey eyes. He never got angry with Poppy, though. They'd remained best friends all these years. When they'd reached junior high, he'd started having girlfriends. All the girls at school wanted him, but he never kept any of them for long. And he never confided in them. To them, he was a mysterious, secretive bad boy. Only Poppy saw the other side of him, the vulnerable, caring side. "Okay," the technician said, bringing Poppy back to the present with a jerk. "You're done. Let's wipe this jelly off you." "So what did it show?" Poppy asked, glancing up at the monitor. "Oh, your own doctor will tell you that. The radiologist will read the results and call them over to your doctor's office." The technician's voice was absolutely neutral, so neutral that Poppy looked at her sharply. Back in Dr. Franklin's office, Poppy fidgeted while her mother paged through out-of-date magazines. When the nurse said Mrs. Hilgard, they both stood up. No," the nurse said, looking flustered. "Mrs. Hilgard, the doctor just wants to see you for a minute. Alone." Poppy and her mother looked at each other, and slowly, Poppy's mother put down her People magazine and followed the nurse. Poppy said after her, "Now what on earth? Dr. Franklin had never done that before." Poppy realised that her heart was beating hard. Not fast, just hard. Bang, 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 in the middle of her chest, shaking her insides, making her feel unreal and giddy. "Don't think about it. It's probably nothing. Read a magazine." But her fingers didn't seem to work properly. When she finally got the magazine open, her eyes ran over the words without delivering them to her brain. What are they talking about in there? What's going on? It's been so long. It kept getting longer. As Poppy waited, she found herself vacillating between two modes of thought. One, nothing serious was wrong with her and her mother was going to come out and laugh at her for even imagining that there was. And two, something awful was wrong with her and she was going to have to go through some dreadful treatment to get well. The cover pit and the open pit. When the pit was covered, it seemed laughable, and she felt embarrassed for having such melodramatic thoughts. But when it was open, she felt as if all her life before this had been a dream, and now she was hitting hard reality at last. I wish I could call James, she thought. At last, the nurse said, "Poppy, come on in." Dr. Franklin's office was wood-panelled, with certificates and diplomas hanging on the walls. Poppy sat down in a leather chair and tried not to be too obvious about scanning her mother's face. Her mother looked too calm with strain underneath. She was smiling, but it was an odd, slightly unsteady smile. Oh, God, Poppy thought, something is going on. Now, there's no cause for alarm, the doctor said, and immediately Poppy became more alarmed. Her palms stuck to the leather of the chair arms. Something showed up in your sonogram that's a little unusual, and I'd like to do a couple of other tests, Dr. Franklin said, his voice slow and measured, soothing. One of the tests requires that you fast from midnight the day before you take it, but your mum says you didn't eat breakfast today. Poppy said mechanically, "I ate one frosted flake." "One frosted flake? Well, I think we can count that as fasting. We'll do the tests today, and I think it's best to admit you to the hospital for them. Now, the tests are called a CAT scan and an ERCP. That's short for something even I can't pronounce." He smiled. Poppy just stared at him. "There's nothing frightening about either of these tests," he said gently. "The CAT scan is like an X-ray. The ERCP involves passing a tube down the throat, through the stomach and into the pancreas. Then we inject into the tube a liquid that will show up on X-rays." His mouth kept moving, but Poppy had stopped hearing the words. She was more frightened than she could remember being in a long time. "I was just joking about the interesting scar," she thought. "I don't want a real disease. I don't want to go to hospital, and I don't want any tubes down my throat." She looked at her mother in mute appeal. Her mother took her hand.